Well, happy Friday, everybody. Glad you're with me today. We are in Matthew chapter 10. And what I want to do is spend a few minutes answering a question or teaching, and then get to my devotional thought. And the teaching note really is about this. Why did Jesus, in this instance, send his 12 disciples on this evangelistic preaching mission only to the towns, the cities of Israel, the nation, the house of Israel, to the Jewish people? And what did Jesus mean at the end of verse 23 when he said they would not finish going to all those cities and towns of Israel until the Son of Man comes? So let's talk about that a little bit and hopefully help you understand what's going on in this chapter. On the most basic level, Jesus is training or equipping his 12 disciples to be evangelists, missionaries, and to lead the ministry of the church after his resurrection and ascension back to heaven. And so he's beginning this training close at home, like any of us would. Go to the Jewish people where we live here first, start there. But on a deeper level, Jesus had a pattern that is repeated in the rest of the New Testament of going to the Jews first, then to the Gentiles. And you see this in the book of Acts and other places, to the Jews first, and then the Samaritans, and then to the Gentiles. Jesus and his disciples were not anti-Gentile. Many times in the Gospels, Jesus and the disciples went to Gentile areas and shared the gospel and healed people, or shared the gospel and healed Gentiles who were in the Jewish areas. And then at the Great Commission after the resurrection, Jesus told us to go into all the world, which is the Gentiles. So it's not an anti-Gentile or a Jew-only thing. It's part of his training, but it also is his pattern. But it's also giving the nation of Israel an opportunity to respond to the gospel first, to respond to Jesus as Messiah first. And so he says, go. And to understand all of this passage, we need to focus on Jesus saying, go first to the lost house, the sheep of the lost house of Israel. And then in verse 7, he says, as you go, preach, saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Remember, John the Baptist in his preaching said, repent, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And Jesus started his ministry earlier in Matthew, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. In other words, in the appearance of Jesus, the kingdom of heaven was arriving. And then the Son of Man, a favorite title of Jesus for himself, is an eschatological term that comes from the book of Ezekiel, and Jesus often used it to refer to himself and his comings. See, when you and I read in verse 23, until the Son of Man coming, because of our conditioning, we automatically think second coming. But no, listen to me. Jesus often referred to the Son of Man coming both to refer to his first coming and his second coming. The Gospels often talk about Jesus' first coming to die on the cross and be raised from the dead as his coming. He came into his own. And then there's also the Son of Man comes. And when Jesus came the first time, he inaugurated, if you will, the kingdom of heaven. When he comes the second time, he will complete, or what's the word I'm looking for? He will, the kingdom of heaven will be fully realized. So the kingdom of heaven is at hand and it's present now. We live in the kingdom. We're citizens of the kingdom now, but it will culminate, it will be fully realized at the second coming. So don't assume he's talking about the second coming. In fact, it can't be the second coming here because Jesus said to these 12, you won't finish reaching every city in Palestine until the Son of Man comes. Well, they died almost 2,000 years ago and he hasn't come back. So it doesn't make any sense for this to refer to the second coming. What's he referring to then? Jesus' first coming and the inauguration of the kingdom involved bringing the good news of the gospel and salvation, but it also involved judgment. And notice in this passage, in the verses leading up to verse 23, Jesus said, you go into these towns and villages and cities and you stay and you share the gospel. But if they won't receive you and they don't receive the message, they don't receive the gospel, what do? You shake the dust from your feet and you go into the next town. And then Jesus said in verse 15, for those cities in Judea, in Palestine, during the days of the disciples who don't receive his disciples, don't receive him, don't receive the message. There's going to be judgment, and it's going to be severe like Sodom and Gomorrah. Jesus often talked in the Gospels about the judgment of God upon the house of Israel for their rejection of the Messiah. Now, that's not an anti-Semitic idea or thought or speech. It's just the idea that that they were his privileged people and they reject the Messiah. God judges. And when Jesus came and brought the kingdom of heaven, judgment was part of that. And in the lifetime of these disciples, that was fulfilled. 70 AD, when the Romans obliterated the nation, the country, when the Romans obliterated the city of Jerusalem, when they obliterated the temple. It's the reason there's not a temple in Jerusalem today. The Muslim mosque, Dome of the Rock, resides on the property where the temple the Romans destroyed in 770 AD, where it existed. And Jesus said that would happen in Matthew 24. Not one stone will be left upon another. And so what's Jesus saying? I'm sending you out to the house of Israel first for a lot of reasons. One of those is to give them an opportunity to say yes to the Messiah. And those that don't, shake the dust off your feet as a sign against them, because judgment's coming like Sodom and Gomorrah. And you are not going to reach everybody. You won't even finish going to all the cities before the Son of Man comes. This inauguration of the kingdom of heaven that is both the gospel and judgment, and is salvation for those who believe, but it's on judgment on the nation of Israel that doesn't. That's what he's talking about here. That's what this chapter is getting at. Now, yes, there are other interpretations of this passage. One simple one is, hey, you're not going to finish going everywhere until I come and meet you. And that is a plausible interpretation. I think the least plausible interpretation is the dispensational idea that this is all talking about something that will happen with Israel after the second coming of Jesus. There is no contextual basis, just none, for that interpretation of this passage. Now, devotionally, what spoke to me that I want to share with you is verse 16, where he said, behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Go, so be shrewd or wise as serpents, and be innocent, or the King James, harmless as doves. And Jesus says, I'm sending you out among wolves. The culture is a harsh place. There's persecution, and there's laughter and ridicule and rejection of the gospel and of you as my representatives. You're like sheep among the wolves. But note, he said, I send you. It's not that the wolves come and find us and the wolves come and attack us. He says, I'm sending you out there to the wolves. I'm sending you into this hostile culture. It's an evangelistic imperative to go. Take the initiative. And as you do that, he said, here's how I want you to behave or conduct yourselves. Be shrewd or wise as serpents, and be innocent or harmless as doves. What does he mean by that? Well, serpents, shrewd, because they have to hide. I mean, people want to kill snakes. Okay, let's just be honest. No, but most people want to kill snakes. We don't like snakes. We want to kill snakes. And so snakes don't go out of their way to be discovered, okay? They are shrewd. They don't want people to see them. Now, Jesus is not saying you hide. No, because he's already said, I'm sending you out there. And the idea of us hiding contradicts everything else he teaches in the Gospels. But what he is saying is, don't draw unnecessary attention to yourself. Don't draw unhelpful, unhealthy attention to yourself as you go out there and do evangelism and do life among the wolves. I think today in 2024 about the celebrity nature of some clergy. about the luxurious lifestyles. And I'm not talking about a minister making a good living or even having a lot, but I'm talking about the way some today just flaunt being wealthy and the cars they drive and the houses they build and the planes they fly in. And they draw unnecessary and unhelpful attention to themselves, and it detracts from the gospel. You know that's true, and I know that's true. I think about the way we have a tendency to cover up the sexual sins and sexual abuse. Oh, we're protecting the reputation of the church, but sin will be discovered. Whatever you hide, God will bring into the open. And in the end, you bring worse attention to the church. Be wise and be innocent. Be smart and be true. Be pure. Do what's right. I think about some selling their souls to political parties, whether it's to the left or to the right, to the Democrats or the Republicans, and bringing unhealthy attention that detracts from the gospel. Think about the worldly and unkind demeanor of some quote unquote Christians on social media, whether it's Facebook or Twitter in particular. And they act just like everybody else, and they're unkind, and they just automatically forward things, whether they know if they're true or not, and bring unhealthy, unhelpful attention to the church and to the gospel, and they hinder the cause of Christ. And I think about just the plain rudeness of some people who go to church and say they're Christians. So be wise and don't draw that kind of unhealthy attention, and be as innocent, as harmless as doves. Doves are beautiful, and they're often used today as a symbol of peace. Be pure and holy. Be innocent. Peace. Be kind and be gentle. We live in a very hostile, violent, negative, attacking, critical culture. And these two qualities, wise as serpents and harmless as doves, are greatly needed, yet they are greatly lacking. It's my prayer that you and I add to our culture by developing these two qualities of wisdom and kindness, so that we don't detract from the gospel, but we make it shine like the beautiful thing it really is. That's the message for today. I'll see you Sunday in worship. Bring somebody with you. And then Monday as we look at chapter 11. God bless you, everybody.